The Bible is a living word that reads us as we read it. It's a person, a voice that proves that time is not linear, as one sentence can confirm the past, guide the present, and declare the future. You are here. I am here. He is here. We are here right now. In the tomorrow of yesterday and in the yesterday of tomorrow, I thank you for joining today. So we're back. Thank you so much for joining once again. So, in our last episode, we talked about how the Israelites chose not to drive out all of the people of the land that they went to conquer. And they began worshiping the gods of the people. They intermarried with them. They shared in their customs. And ultimately, they started to turn their backs on God. As a result, the Lord turned the Israelites over to the ops, and when they suffered long enough, they would cry out to God, and the Lord would raise up a judge, a military leader, and he would rescue the Israelites from oppression. There would be victory, there would be peace. Then the judge or the rescuer would pass on, and then the Israelites would go right back to doing evil. And that was the cycle that continues in the book of Judges. And we talked about one account of when this happened and how Ehud very creatively drove a dagger into the belly of one of the kings, and we introduced this King Jabin of Hazor and his army commander, Sisera, who I talked about was savage. He was very hard. Sisera oppressed Israel for 20 years, and then they cried out to the Lord for help. And as you know from our pattern, the Lord sends a rescuer to save the Israelites from oppression. So we're going to draw the curtains, and entering center stage is this woman named Deborah. Now, Deborah was a judge. She would act like an actual judge. She would hear out the disputes of the people and help to render a judgment that would solve a problem when it came to disputes amongst the community. But she also was a prophet, which means that her ear was tuned to the voice of the Lord, and he would speak to her and give her insight about things, and she was to share with the people or with particular individuals and so on and so forth. And so Deborah actually got a word from the Lord. And when she got the word from the Lord, she sent for this guy named Barak from the tribe of Naphtali. And when she sent for him, he arrived, and she told him, she said, listen, the Lord told me to tell you, you need to gather 10,000 warriors from your tribe and from the tribe of Zebulon. And then y'all need to meet up at Mount Tabor, because the Lord is going to have Sisera and his warriors meet you at the Kishon River, and the Lord is going to give you victory over him. Now, I already told you, Sisera was a very intimidating man. And I told you in the last episode, he was not somebody you wanted to find yourself in battle with, because this guy had 900 iron chariots. And I told you that was much like going up against somebody who's in a bulletproof Chevy Suburban, black on black on black on black, while you sitting on a bicycle. And so Barack was like, listen, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And I'll go, but I'll only go if you go with me. So Deborah was like, all right, cool. I'll rock it out with you. But just know this victory over Sisera will come at the hands of a woman. And Barack seemed very unfazed by that. He's like, I don't even really care. Like, I want to live. And so Deborah went with Barack to gather the warriors, and he led them to Mount Tabor. When Sisera heard what was going on, he called for all of his warriors and all 900 of his iron chariots, and they marched to the Kishon River. So when they made it there, Deborah told Barack, she said, it's good. Just prepare yourself, brace yourself, and know that today the Lord is going before you, and he's going to give you victory over this dude, Sisera. Like, you don't even need to fret. Don't sweat it. It's good. So Barak led the 10,000 warriors into battle. And when he attacked, the Lord threw Sisera and his troops into a panic. Like it was a frenzy, it was chaos. And Sisera, he hopped down from one of the chariots and he just took off running because he's like, this this not looking too good. So he just took off running, leaving every single one of his warriors to be wiped out by Barak and his warriors, the men of Naphtali and Zebulun. And Sisera ran to the tent of this woman named Jael. So Jael was the wife of this Kenite man named Heber. Kenites were not Israelites, but they were a nomadic tribe that would oftentimes just kind of travel around and settle in different places. And Heber was he was cool. Like he was friends with King Jabin. And so when Jael saw Sisera running, she went to meet him and she's like, come in here. Like, hey, come, make yourself comfortable. I'm good. Like, don't be scared, And Sisera, I imagine he's like, I'm so thirsty. And he's just catching his breath because, again, he's been running literally for his life. He's like, girl, I'm parched. Can you, please give me some water? And Jael, she's like, you know what? I got something even better for you. Here's some milk. So she gave him a drink of milk, gulped that milk down. He's like, and then he laid down and Jael covered him with a blanket. And as he's laying there, he kind of sits up and he tells her, he's like, I need you to keep watch and cover for me. If anybody comes looking for me, just don't tell them I'm here. And Jael was like, okay, and I imagine it wasn't long before his breathing changed and Jael recognized that Sisera had drifted off to sleep. So Jael is standing there. The army commander of the king, who has been oppressing the Israelite people for decades now, is laying in her tent. And she's standing there and she grabs a tent peg and a hammer. And she starts tiptoeing, creeping up on a sleeping Sisera. I imagine her heart is racing and she has this loop in her mind and she's like, you get one shot. You just get one shot. Jael, she raised her hammer and with great precision, she drove the tent peg through Sisera's temples and into the ground. I'ma run that back. This man is sleeping in her tent. She gave him a drink of milk. He drifted off to sleep. She covered him with a blanket, made him all comfortable, stood at the tent doorway, keeping watch. And then when he fell deep enough into sleep, she took a tent peg and hammered it into his head, pinning him to the ground. It said she crushed his skull. Fun fact. So in biblical times, it was the responsibility of the women to pitch the tents and to pack them up when they would move on to other lands or territories. So Jael, being married to a Kenite, who was again a nomadic people, she was very familiar with tent pegs and with hammers because this was something she did regularly. She was regularly hammering tent pegs into the ground while pitching the tent. But here she takes something that she's familiar with, that she's pretty good at, to partner with God and relieving his people of oppression. Now, Jael, let me make it very clear, she didn't have a dog in the fight. It was for no personal gain of herself that she did this. But she recognized that there was an opportunity for her to do something. And she did. Barak is looking for Sisera. And Jael made sure that he knew. She's like, hey, I know exactly who you're looking for. And you're going to find him right here in my tent. Barak went inside Jael's tent and found Sisera pinned to the ground with a tent peg driven through his skull. And he's like, yo, wow. Israel had a great victory that day, as foreseen by Deborah, the prophet, at the hands of a woman. Now, when Barak heard that, he probably thought, oh, it's going to be a victory at the hands of the woman, being Deborah. But no, Deborah, who had insight from the Lord, knew that it was going to be at the hands of a woman, and it ended up being at the hands of Jael. God can use anybody with things that they do, everyday tasks. It could be tying your shoelace that God uses. It could be filling an ice tray that God uses. It could be anything. God can use it for the victory of his people. And again, the Israelites, after this very courageous act, because think about it, if Jael would have missed, that would have been the end of her. This is not some little weakling that she's up against. If she would have missed, that would have been very tragic for her, no doubt. But she didn't miss. And so there was this very courageous act. And at the hands of her very courageous act, the Israelites had great victory that day, because not only did Barak and his 10,000 warriors go out and wipe out the army, but also King Jabin's army commander was pinned to the ground. And so he was ultimately destroyed at the end, because the Israelites grew stronger and they were able to then go in and defeat the king that was responsible for their oppression. And then there was peace in the land for 40 years. And then, as you know, the Israelite people found themselves doing evil again. And we'll get into what happens next in our next episode, if the Lord blesses me to record another one. Until then, bye for now.